Front plate, and this is the fusee front bush. It's not original extended like that, and it's made out of modern brass as well, and it's worn very elongated, as you can see, partly because modern brass is not a good material for bushes like this, hard brass, and it does have a tendency to wear a lot faster than the sort of on the face of it softer cast brass. But the thing about cast brass is you can hammer harden it and work harden it, and it produces a much more resilient hard working surface and tends to last a lot longer. So I'm going to replace this bush with a cast brass replacement, but I'm not going to leave it extended like that. I'm going to do it as it would have been originally and just have it the thickness of the plate so it all looks right. It never ceases to amaze me what a mess some people manage to make of a clock plate. All of this file marking here, completely unnecessary. I mean, they've obviously bushed the centre and the third here, and to reduce the bush down, instead of getting it the right length or somewhere near in the lathe, or even reducing it using a sink cutter, they've just attacked it with a file across the plate. And I know that the day has been and gone where this clock was just a clock that needed to work, and it wasn't particularly historically important, and they didn't really care. It was just a mechanical thing to rebush it and keep it going. But even so, I mean, a little bit of pride in your workmanship, please. Look at the state of that. That's on the back plate as well. So anyway, I'm not going to do anything to remove that. That's there now. It's part of its history. I'm not going to abrade the plates back, but I'm going to do some nice neat bushing within it. So hopefully my bushing will speak for itself. But I need to just do address this one first, which is the back of the fusee, which is very worn. Okay, so you can see I've rebushed the centre here. If I was able to rebush it without touching the plate, why couldn't the man have refrained from using the file before me? This is the lower potance, and I'm just in the process of rebushing it, but I'm also checking the condition of the screw. Now the screw for adjusting the crown wheel is a replacement, and is a mashup of threads and is not a very nice thing, so I'm going to make a new one. So I was just looking at what the closest thread size was, and comes out at well, near 6BA. It's not exactly 6BA, but it was near enough to be able to just persuade a 6BA tap through. So just cleaning up the thread, because it would have been a much smaller thread than this originally, so I'm not trying to replicate the original thread. I'm trying to work out what the closest was to whatever they bodged it up with, and so I've just been able to chase out a reasonable 6BA thread that I can then make a screw for. This is the top potance, and this one's also been a little bit bent around. It was bent up quite steeply. They've obviously been trying to get the crown wheel higher up to compensate for issues with the escapement and filing bits off the pallets, and so I've tweaked it back into line. It's now pretty well as it should be, tweaked back into line. However, there is a crack. It's an old crack. It's been there around before, and it looks like somebody might have tried to address it before. What I'm going to try and do is just to sweat some solder into it, just to hold it together. It's actually pretty stiff. It's pretty rigid. It's not like it's all about to spring apart. But if that doesn't seem strong enough, then my plan B will be to drill it from the back and to put a pin in. But I'm going to try just seeing if I can sweat some soft solder in there and get that to take. Right, so just taking it slowly. A lot of baker's fluid flooded around the crack, and sort of topping it up so that as the crack was warming up, it was sort of soaking the baker's fluid in, and then it did cause the solder to flow. So put a reasonably good joint. It's not flowing absolutely everywhere, but it's enough to make that crack now so that it's not going to move anymore. So a light clean up now, just to tidy up the solder, and that will suffice as a repair. So here's the escapement between the plates, having sorted out the crown wheel, and I've made a new adjuster screw for here. And as you can see, the crown wheel is too low at the moment for how the pallets are. But the pallets are actually not in their original position. They've been moved. As you can see here, there's several false starts that have happened, and also the part of the work is to sort out the knife edge, and you can see that it's sitting up quite a bit higher than it probably would have done originally. So what I'm going to do is to repair the pallets, repair the knife edge, and then relocate it so that it is all within the range of being able to set it up on the original adjustment, and then we'll follow making the apron for the back of the backcock. Here are the pallets as they stand. As you can see, there are faces soft soldered onto both of the pallet faces, and the knife edge is gone and has been sort of turned up into a pivot. I'm not sure whether that's actually a piece that's been fitted into the block, or whether it's the block has been turned down and it's been drilled and a pivot put in. We'll see. As you can see, the pendulum rod is split. The pendulum rod's in a bit of a state, actually. It's been squeezed up in a vise to try and sort the threads out and tighten them up, and so the rod is definitely going to be replaced. So I think what I'm going to do is to just desolder all these bits and pieces and see what falls off and see what we're left with. See what's left of the original to work with. Right, so here are the pallets after I've desoldered all the bits and pieces. The pallet faces are probably actually serviceable. I've tidied them up a little bit. They're pretty well down the centre line. There was no significant wear, so I think those big pads that had been soldered on were probably in order to lengthen the flags after they'd been messing around with the positioning. So I'm going to use this as a starting point for making my adjustments. The rear pivot here is actually a big blob of brazing, which has then been turned back to make it into a shoulder for the pivot, and I assume the pivot is drilled in here. So what I'm going to do, because the knife edge has all been filed off, obviously, is I'm going to mill a pocket, and I'm going to hard solder a block of steel that I can then mill and file a knife edge from. Right, so I have repaired the pallets to give me a starting point. So these are the original pallets still, but with all the bits and pieces taken off. I've tidied up the front pivot because that was, well, it's been re-pivoted, but it was far too long and it was a little bit of a mess. So I've tidied that up, so that's going to be serviceable. But more importantly, what I've done is to solder a block. You can just about make out the shape of the joint there. This is a block of tool steel, gauge plate, and it's soldered on, and I'm now going to shape that into the knife edge. So the important thing with a knife edge is that it is the bottom of the knife, the edge of the knife is through the center line of the pallet, so that it pivots about its center. Otherwise it will describe a sort of U-shaped arc and will mean that the drops are doing weird and wonderful things. The clock will run like that, and many a clock has run like that, because over the years, as the knife edge gets sharpened, it gradually creeps up and goes above center. but it should be through the centre line of that. So, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mark it up, and then I'm going to just shape the knife edge into that. This is the backcock as it stands. Now I need to do some work on this to restore it. The knife edge would have been in a V block, and they've soldered all of this in or brazed all of this in order to give a pivot point, and had 2 stabs at that as well by the look of it. This here, which is a sort of plugged up hole with braze, that's the original screw hole for the apron. Now I would love to keep that, but as you can see, it's compromised by all of this, and I'm going to have to replace that anyway to put a better dovetailed in piece of cast brass in order to give it a nice bed for the knife edge. And they filed it down so close to the hole that I think I'm going to struggle. So the first thing I'm going to do initially is to cut this out and see how close it is to that hole. If I can get away with keeping the hole as it is, then I will. If not, what I'll do then is to actually put a dovetailed in piece that's bigger than all of it, which I've then got space to machine the V bed and to drill a new hole in the same location. It just wouldn't be the original, but I'll first try to do something to save the original. I've cut the remains of the bed out, or whatever that big lump was that they'd put in. I'm just looking. I think the original screw was something in the region of 8BA, which is that, so about that kind of size. So I'm going to just drill out that hole to 8BA tapping size, and then see how much material there is left. If it's breaking through, then I might have to go deeper, but we'll see. At the moment I haven't actually got all the way through the solder there, so yeah, we'll see. Okay, so here's the apron as far as I've got with it. I've used a piece of modern brass because it needs to be fairly thin and strong, and as it's a replacement part, I don't mind it being modern brass as opposed to cast brass. The functional characteristics of the material are fine for it to be modern or hard brass. Because it's not the only working surface will be where the back of the knife edge, the end shake is controlled against the back of this. That's the function of this, really, other than looking pretty. So yeah, the wear characteristics should be fine for that. I used cast brass, which I hammer hardened for the actual bed of the knife edge, which I'll cut the V in later. I was able to save the original screw hole position in the end, and you can see I've soldered in a block of cast brass, which is just kissing the top of that hole, but that's fine. I was able to save it and run a tap through for the threads. So that is as far as I've got with that. You will see this as it's cut to shape to be the apron. And then what I'll do for the colour, so that it doesn't look too pink, is a little trick with a heat gun, just to warm it up that yellows the colour of modern or hard brass, and warms it so that it warms the colour, makes it more yellow, so that it sort of tones in with the rest of the clock. So this is the where I've got to with the knife edge as well. You can see it's got a new block soldered on, which is shaped now into more or less the right shape. It's too long, it's too tall, and it hasn't got the curve filed onto it yet, but it's the starting point. So the next stage will be to come onto the movement and to pick up the original position of the pallets, which is about there. So re-drilling that hole and bushing it, and then I can mark up the center position, mark the position of the knife edge V, the saddle, onto the backcock, and then I can mill that, and then we're getting there. Here's the replacement apron, backcock apron, as it stands. Now I've just sort of given myself an idea of the shape that I'm going to make it into. But next stage is obviously to cut it to shape, and then that's it really. It's a fairly simple part, so we'll just cut it to shape. And as I said before, I will do a little bit of magic to colour it slightly as well. There we go. So I'm happy with the shape of this. I've described out the shape of the backcock. I used the centre to describe the bottom arc, and then obviously the sides are brought down from the side of the backcock, and then I used a French curve to just describe the curves there. So next stage is to cut it and shape it.